All right, so good evening, everybody. It is Sunday, May 7th, and we are rolling into the very final stages of the ongoing election for the Council of Presidents and national elections for California Nurses Association, National Nurses United. And tonight we're all getting together to talk primarily about the importance of creating independent space for discussion about union business by nurses, dues paying union members. How about we all go around real quick and introduce each other or introduce ourselves, just who you are, where you're from, if you're running for office, and then we'll pass it on to the next person. How about Mark, you want to introduce yourself first?
Thank you, John. My name is Mark Goodek. I've been a California nurse for 19 years, Canadian born and educated. I'm an American citizen now, and I'm part of the shift change slate. Work at Altabate Summit Medical Center, formerly ICU, now interventional radiology.
Raina, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Raina Lindsay, California nurse for 13 years. I am here for the Council of Presidents, ICU for 7 to 8 years at this point.
Nice. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Eric Cook. I'm at Altabates Hospital in Berkeley. I have been a nurse for since 1990, and I've been over 30 some years at Altabates, and I'm running for the shift change slate here for the Council of Presidents.
Nice. My name is, since I'm also running for Council of Presidents, my name is John Hieronymus. I'm a nurse at University of Chicago Medical Center in the PACU, perioperative care and surgical recovery. Before that, I worked in the medical ICU and I've worked in the ED. I've been a nurse at University of Chicago for 12 years, and I've been a RN for 15 years as an LPN before that. And I will pass it on to Torald.
Torald Erdahl, Altabates, currently in labor and delivery. I've been a nurse for 39 years. And I've been at Altabates for, I think, going on 37 years. And I've been an active union member, very active union member for pretty much all that time. I even had a short stint working as staff with the California Nurses Association. And I have served as an RN member of numerous negotiating teams. And I'm running to be a delegate to the convention, just to help work the floor.
Nice. Allison, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Allison Miller. I'm an adult oncology RN. I'm also a forensic nurse. I've been nursing for 20 years and over 20 years, I should say. I'm down here in Southern California. I work for Long Beach Memorial, Miller's Children's and Women's Hospital. And I've been with CNA with 2 different hospitals. So pretty much my whole career as well. So have a lot of background with our particular union.
Cool. And Cindy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi. My name is Cindy. I'm actually from Chicago. I work in the John A. Stroger Hospital in SICU.
Welcome to the call, Cindy.
Oh, thank you.
And then Ann, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Ann Gabler. I work at Altabates and have been on the bargaining team. I guess this last time around was our 3rd time. Is that right, Eric? And I've started there as a new grad 41, almost 42 years ago in the NICU, and have been an active union member. I'm a nurse rep. Just here to support.
Thank you, Ann. So the call tonight, we're gonna be going over like how it is that we can either how we've been building these kind of independent spaces where staff aren't kind of like leaning over us, keeping an eye on us, trying to shut down conversations that we think are really important about union business. And so we've got a couple. Oh, Eric, you get your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to mention, are you able to put it in the chat? Well, I mean, I could just say it. I know Ann is on the call, so she's familiar with the text. You know, that Michael Hill, I'm just relaying, Ann, that basically I was kind of shocked today to find out that of all places, Sutter Roseville has a shift change movement. I had no intention. And if Mark said, well, maybe we could get a few and go up there, I would have never went. I had no desire to ever go to Sutter Roseville again in my life. In fact, when we drove by Sutter Roseville when I was in Sacramento, Torold and I went up there, Allison, just so you know, in what was it, 2015, dear? 2015, correct?
I think so.
Yeah, and we talked to them to encourage them to step up to strike, right? And we went up there at the behest of Sean Bartlett, who you know, I appreciate if you guys come up. And Torold, we really talked to them, and she really allayed their fears and everything. And I, you know, Torold, we don't want to get too much into it. Torold, the young lady that's like the chief nurse rep there, was actually her grandmother or aunt, I think it was Torold, was your mentor in labor and delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 8 years later, that hospital totally betrayed us. They basically were the bulldogs for Sean Bartlett and Ann Stewart to ram and bully us, what they consider the Sutter CNA agreement, down the other table's throats. In fact,
The other
openly
16
mocking them.
tables.
Yeah, the comment,
The other
mocking,
16 tables. Yep.
mocking them, making them cry. I mean, all the stuff you hear about Me Too, that's what they did at that table. So I wrote Sutter Roseville off. Like, I would be surprised if we got a vote. I would have figured it was just a mistake. Somebody hit the wrong bubble. Now to find out that they're panicking, that shift change paraphernalia and flyers are ending up in Sutter Roseville, to me, that is like finding out a UFO landed on the White House lawn, because that, to me, that would be a near impossibility to me if you had just, until I read Mike's text, that they are trying to get to the bottom of this. And part of it is, if I did I hear it wrong, Ann, when I read it, it sounds like they can't get into the Facebook page there. Is that what they're panicking on?
Yeah. So that's the key thing. That's totally the key thing, is that, I mean, you're just introducing the whole topic for tonight of how to create a space where nurses can talk to each other. And the way to do that is to keep the CNA people out. You have a Facebook page, you don't let any of the CNA staff on it, so that people can feel free to talk however they want to. And of course, they want to control the narrative, so they want to monitor what's being said. So yeah, and they're panicking.
And exponentially, once Mike cut CNA off of the Honey Badger page, our rebellion just exponentially increased in numbers, the number of people joining. Because I'm pretty sure behind our backs, well, if somebody made a derisive comment about the union, they somehow got, you know, a backdoor call somewhere, you know, oh, hey, I hear you're a little disgruntled, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the way to go. I know, Allie, I think you guys have no CNA on your page, right?
Yeah, the page that we have now, we currently don't have CNA staff on it, based on the history when we used to on a different site.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you never know though. Sometimes people can come in and their staff and you don't know they're there. You know, people may take screenshots. So it's not that they're unaware, but they don't have control of the site. It's very important. for them
Yeah.
not to.
We have a draconian, a labor notes would probably have a stroke. We have a draconian method. Like if somebody wants to join Honey Badger, Mike will call Ann, myself, or Tor, somebody that he knows. I want a second variation that this person is okay. Have they ever crossed a picket line? Are they close to management? Are they too close to CNA? So we know we don't want infiltrators on the page. I mean,
Yeah,
we
Mike
have
is
some,
the sole administrator of ours.
yeah. It's
So
a full-time
anything
job for
posted,
So-
anything posted goes through him. You
Real
know, he's
quick.
very good and it's very, very timely. You know, you put something up and usually within, half an hour or so it gets posted. But he's the sole administrator.
Torald's got their hand up.
Yeah, just, one comment about Roseville is I think it is possible that what that really is showing is that the bargaining team at Roseville might not be speaking for all the Roseville nurses. They were probably handpicked by Sean and other CNA staff. And so I wouldn't underestimate that. It's possible that that kind of stuff is happening elsewhere too, because we've certainly seen here in California anyway, this major attempt by CNA staffers to control RN leadership.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
for sure. I mean, they for sure did not want us, Eric, myself, and Mike on the bargaining team this last go round. They for sure did
Right.
not want that. They tried very hard to get people who were relatively new nurses within maybe the last 5 years, who had never really even been nurse reps, to be on the bargaining team.
Raina, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to add also geographically with Roseville and Sacramento, it is heavily run by Sutter as well. So since we know that Sutter and CNA are in cahoots with each other, I could see where the fear of Roseville and the nurses there, how they feel. I just wanted to put that out there. We got to take that in consideration as well. And you're right that there is a lot of they've been handpicking people that have no experience, no history of the union at all. And that's something that we would have to take that in consideration to find ways for them to have that, to develop a space for them so they can talk and make the decisions that they need that's appropriate.
Mhm.
Right. And I do want to point out that in my experience here in Chicago, elected leadership versus the actual rank and file can be very different. So we'll have some elected people who are very in lockstep with the staff in our union. And then we have rank and file in my hospital at Cook County, at the other hospitals where there's a very different sense of what things are and what's right and what's important. And so personally, I'm always happy to talk to any nurse, no matter what hospital they're from, if they're interested in us. And I'm not surprised when I hear people from hospitals that maybe where you would think that they're more, I think that University of Chicago is probably one of those hospitals where people would be surprised to see support for shift change, but there's quite a lot of support here. It's just that our current elected leadership in our facility are being used by staff to try and tamp down on this. So touched on a couple of things. How about Allison, do you want to give a rundown on your experience first with having a Facebook group that was connected, that had staff presence, and then how you shifted over to an independent Facebook group and what the difference has been?
Sure. I would say our first Facebook account that was created was back in 2011 when we were bargaining. And it was myself and a fellow colleague who worked on putting it together and, establishing things. We had even tried to do like a messaging board through the Zeta board system and spent a lot of time loading data on that, because it wasn't just Facebook, it was nurses' emails. They could sign up and register that way. And the interesting thing about that one is we had created a banner and, we were calling it like the California Nursing Association of Long Beach. And, we were told that, well, you can't call it that because it says CNA in it. And we were like, okay, well, we can change it. But then they were fine with there being a California Nursing Association of Long Beach as a Facebook page, which was created. And I always thought that was weird, but they were involved in that. And they were also brought on as administrators as we were, nothing above it, as far as above the nurse administrator. I was always a nurse administrator on it. And, for the most part, it was a public page, not a private page. And so any nurse could read and view and then come on and comment if they wanted to, as themselves. But when bargaining would settle, then you don't have that much flow on the page if you're not discussing the workplace. And you don't really, or we found that most nurses don't want to speak openly if it's a public Facebook page as a group versus a private. So what began to happen is the site that was originated for the bargaining in 2011, once the contract closed, turned into more of a generalized site where all the political things started coming in. And then one of the nurse admin who had retired started bringing all kind of the global points of the large organization. It's seeing more organization pushed, not nurse driven so much. Then it got to the point where there was so few traffic that this particular nurse member, who happened to be a board member with CNA, actually paid from her own personal account to try to get more traffic to this public group site. So, get more moves, get more likes. If it's showing up on more Facebook feeds, more opportunity for more reads and views. And so that kind of was going on. I never really got caught up in that. I would, look at the site. I rarely posted on the site, but I did read the site. And then, bargaining comes around and we go through 2016 and we're trying to use it to help rally people with bargaining. But it really was in 2019 when we were bargaining that we, and sorry, I know this is a long story, but it's pretty important for us to get an idea of how our organization views us, because back using the messaging board that I shared with you that we had began to create, I remember being told by a staffer, that database that you're building is worth a lot to some people. And it was kind of like just engaging the conversation. I was like, oh, what do you mean? Well, like it's an organizational tool. And at the time, I understand the weight of the commentary now, and not so much then when it was being made to me. But as we moved along in 2019, one of the nurses was just sharing how CNA will try to recruit new members. We had a CNA staffer actually call up a colleague of mine, and they were trying to recruit her onto the bargaining team, and the staffer told her that the only returning nurse to the bargaining team would be nurse so-and-so, and they actually stated the name of the nurse who was going to be. Listen, no, their nominations hadn't even been out yet. Staffers were out there trying to recruit people, and they were already saying that prior bargaining team members, and I had been on 2 tables prior, they were saying basically that myself and my colleague, another colleague, weren't going to be returning. So I get this phone call saying, hey, you guys aren't running. The irony of it is in 2019, I had no intention of even running for the bargaining team because 16 was so bad. And I could see kind of the writing on the wall of what CNA was doing to us as nurses, that I really didn't have any intention until I saw that they didn't want us on the team. And then it just kind of went, maybe I need to get on because they're going to try to make more moves and we're probably going to get another poor contract. So I went ahead and ran. It was very difficult. They put up a lot of barriers, which will be, I'm sure, another phone call in regards to how they manipulate nurse votes when it comes to even voting for bargaining team members. But we ended up getting on the bargaining team. And then when we started to talk about bargaining on this already existing Facebook site that doesn't have very much play in between the contracts, the CNA staff were on there and it just wasn't communicating the things that we really wanted to say to our nurses. So we thought,
Up, Allison, you froze up a little bit.
and began posting things. And as it became popular, like maybe they thought, oh yeah, we'll let them do their own thing and won't get any legs. But we started grabbing, some legs, and nurses were thirsty for information. And right now we have 812 members on the site. But as that site was building, it became such a threat to CNA that we were emailed by, the chief of collective bargaining in the Southern California area. And we're basically told to take down the site. So, I mean, we didn't. We knew there was no CNA staff on the site, but they would get screenshots. They told us they were getting screenshots. They told us that they didn't like what we were saying. We were never disparaging to CNA. We were bargaining. What we were doing is we were being transparent, and we were allowing nurses to speak about how they felt or how we felt about things. And we would, give a daily rundown on how things were happening. And CNA, their rationale behind wanting us to take it down is they said, well, there has to be an agreed upon communication with the whole entire bargaining team. You can't just say what you want to say. You all as a group have to have the one same message. Otherwise, the employer won't think that you're in solidarity and that, you could be broken, that you're not acting as one, the unity. So it was kind of like a push of unity, but we actually felt we were unifying nurses. And that was the last thing we were going to do, was to pull that down. So once that was building and, we were refusing to pull it down, all of a sudden on the other Facebook site, the California Nursing Association Long Beach site, all of a sudden I was removed as an administrator. Like I was still on as a member, but I had no way to have any action. And I never did anything on that site that would ever warrant my being removed as an admin. I'm thinking, how do they remove you as an admin when you're like an originator? How did they do that? It was so perplexing. I actually called the gal who was paying money out of her own pocket to get views, like, hey, listen, I just got removed. Who the heck? Get in there and take a look and see who removed me, make some phone calls. And I demanded to be put back, or that I was going to report them to Facebook. And they ended up putting me back, but still I could tell the permissions weren't the same, but they still had me down as admin. Later, they eventually took me off again with no rhyme or reason, no warning, each time, no notification. At that point, it was like, it's not worth the battle. Actually, the Facebook page had turned into something that was so embarrassing that I don't even really want to be a part of a Facebook page that any California Nursing Association staffer is running, because nurses organically go there and they ask transparent questions and they don't get any answers. Where on our page, we're actually trying to do that. So in 2019, we were really able to kind of communicate well to the nurses on what was happening. When we refused to close it down, what CNA started doing was having other bargaining team members come on, and they actually kind of began a conflict on the page, disparaging us for having the page. And I thought, this goes completely against what CNA is saying, that they're concerned about us having our page was that we may not show that we're unified, but then the nurses that are saying that that's the reason why they don't want us to have the page were actually coming on the page complaining that we were having this page and posting these things, and they were actually showing that there was we weren't unified. So it was very interesting how it went down. We were really happy that we kept the page, because once that, I need to hold on one moment. My mouth is getting dry. Once 2019 settled with another bad contract, COVID hit, and it was so wonderful to have that base of support with all the nurses, because it was something that was organically unified. It was so important. And I would go on the organization's Facebook, or even the Facebook that I was removed as an admin from. They just didn't have that. And all of our unit nurses were talking about what was going on with them, what they were doing at home. Everyone was showing all the articles that was happening in China and Italy, just, being there really for each other through COVID meant so much. And it just got it through those years. And then in 22, when bargaining was up again, we were already up and going, and we added more members. And to this day, it slows down during bargaining, and we've been actually sharing this link, the shift change on it. It is a private page. We're not as strict as far as vetting. And I think the reason why is you can't find the page on your own. You can't read it unless you're a member, and you can't be a member unless you're invited by somebody else. Now, someone could create a fake Facebook account, and someone could fake you out and say, oh yeah, I invited them, or, play double agent. It just hasn't been a concern for us. And then when we've had nurses join, you have to be working at our hospital to be able to come on. But if you leave, say for another hospital, we allow you to stay and read and view and post. The name of our site is Long Beach Nurses United. Even if somebody leaves Long Beach and goes somewhere else, because they actually hold the history. Having the history of what happens in your hospital is so important to communicate. And as we know, nurses come and go, they come back, they leave, they're gone for 2 years, they come back, they want to know what's happening, they're coming on back, or well, welcome back, welcome back into the fold. And they want to know what's happening with the union and what's happening with everyone else. And it's just been quite a wonderful experience to have a Facebook page that we were encouraged and actually directed to take down. And to this day, we're so happy that we didn't. And that's about the Facebook.
How many members are in your Facebook group?
Well, we have 812 registered today, but the views can tell you that they're on it, but they're not we're not getting 812 views on posts. So you can get 300, you can get 600, you can get 20. It depends on what it is, on whose feed that it's coming on. Because it is private, the more people look at it, I think it feeds on more people's feeds. But I'll tell you what, we know it's useful because we'll put something on there and then nurses are talking about it. everybody's talking about it in the house, and you know that the only place they got it was from our Facebook. We're very careful as far as we do have a rule that when you join says that you are not to defame the employer. That doesn't mean that you can't talk about the employment, that because that's what we do. We're talking about the union, we're talking about our workplace, pros and cons, all that. But to defame is a whole different thing. Defamation really is when you're saying these untruthful things to purposely pull people down. And we just have a disclaimer on there. And then we also put, and I wanted to read it to you. I wrote it down while we were waiting for people to get on the line. But what did we say? We have also in the rules sections, views expressed here have not been reviewed or approved by our employer. Short little sentence. It's actually a social media sentence that's put in our employer's policy, that they do ask us that if we are going to be discussing our place of employment, they say, can you put this line, because they just don't want to, well, Memorial Care, which is the overall organization over our hospital, is saying these things. And it's like, no, the site is not Memorial Care. It's a bunch of nurses called Long Beach Nurses United who happen to work here, discussing their workplace. The interesting thing is, and I do have to say, as a nurse rep, I've been in those HR rep meetings representing nurses who were called in, getting questioned about their personal posts they put on their personal Facebook. I've never seen HR ever say, you're not allowed to post these things on your Facebook. You have to take this down. Because we've learned in labor fights that you have a right to speak about your place on Facebook so long as you're not defaming. Is what you're saying truthful? Is what you're saying, what was your intent of posting it? These things. Now they'll call you in on your personal Facebook page if you put something out there, and kind of cancel, like, well, is there a dispute at work? If it's between nurse colleagues, there may be these types of things, but the employer union, I feel, and listen, we need our union, I get it, but the way our union behaves at times, I feel I get treated better by the employer at times than I actually am treated by my own union. And I hope to be able to change that, because that's not how things should be.
All right. So before we get on to talking about what we could do if we got elected, or if we setting up our own infrastructure outside of maybe Facebook, which Mark is going to talk about, does anyone else from Altibates want to give like a little additional rundown on kind of so we know that you all have Honey Badger set up and that you're real strict on who can be in. Toral, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to talk about other ways to have a space where we can have conversations about the direction we want the union to go in that isn't necessarily just social media.
Sure.
And one is, we used to have a letters to the editor option in our nurse magazine that was removed many years ago. And that's a problem because it was a way for nurses to have discussions if they had a difference in opinion. It often ended up with good discussions back and forth about which direction to go or how to handle an issue. So when that was removed, that was yet another way for non-RN staff of the union to try to control the agenda, try to control the narrative. And that also goes, I've had staffers try to tell me how to talk to the media. I've been a nurse for almost 40 years. I know how to talk to the media. And yet another way, so these are things that, another way for the union staff to try to control where we want to go. And these are things that if we can win, we need to resurrect the letters to the editor for our nurse magazine, whatever it's called. I forget what it's called right now. And we also need to not have staff control what is stated in flyers, control agenda for union meetings. And those are things that go beyond or beyond social media, because social media is not the only place where we can have an open conversation.
Absolutely. And, one of the first times I realized there's really something wrong with how the union was working was when a group of nurses and I tried to get together to come up with, at our facility in 2019, we were in the middle of a really intense bargaining campaign, and a few nurses recognized that the bargaining committee was really tied up and they were getting they couldn't do anything except for bargaining. And we wanted to prepare for, we had already had one strike and we wanted to prepare for the next one. And so a few of us got together on hey, we're gonna all get together and meet at a restaurant to talk about what we can do to move things along to help prepare for the actual logistics of the next strike. And all of a sudden our phones are all blowing up. All of our phones are the staff are panicking, calling us, trying to figure out where we're at. Where are you at? Who's meeting there? Who's there? And we're all just there to try and make sure that our unions got everything that are at our facility, has everything lined up, all the resources that we can bring to bear as rank and file nurses to make sure that the next strike is as effective as the last one. And it was just this incredible panic from the nurses, from the staff, and they later told us that they were afraid we were meeting with SEIU to get a new union in there. And it's just an insane sort of paranoid panic on the part of the staff that we were not being monitored. We weren't they were keeping a very close eye on us. Also having just the getting out from we want to create a publication for our union that's full of different opinions, and that those opinions are unfiltered. Sometimes we have real serious disagreements, but in those spaces we should be able to talk to each other. And I might strongly disagree with someone about their particular opinion about something that's going on in the union, but part of the way to deal with that stuff is to engage with it and have an actual discussion. One of the things that when I was at the last labor notes, we learned that inside of our union, we have a legal right to free speech, right? That is a key legal guarantee by the federal government that we have a right to speak about, things in our union the way we would like to speak about them. And it's just been a continual struggle to get, and it's not like I'm trying to get up on a soapbox to say things that most people in our union would disagree with. I may disagree with how staff are going about running a particular campaign, but it's not because I don't want the campaign to not succeed. It's because I want the campaign to succeed. We have had a constant struggle here in Chicago on our Metro Council meetings with staff not letting nurses set the agenda, or only giving nurses a very small portion of the agenda that they can control how it's spoken about. And it still is very rigidly kind of monitored and kept within a certain specific bounds. And that's the thing that has always gotten a lot of us kind of like riled up, the constant fight to control our Metro Council. And that's a thing that I think we should change. Like nurses should be making those agendas, and nurses should be facilitating those meetings the way we've been facilitating meetings here, without staff kind of keeping an eye on our, over our shoulder. Anne, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I've said several times before on either the chat or in meetings, that, what you're describing, what Ali is describing, it is happening nationwide. This is a very definitely a CNA and NOC philosophy of controlling the narrative. We have had meetings via Zoom where when people start saying things in the chat, a CNA staff member will jump on with, "Oh, hey, did you hear about the educational conference?" Where they start flooding the chat with anything but what the narrative of the nurses is. Or where when things have gotten hot and they haven't, the meeting is not going in the direction that the CNA staff members were trying to steer it, they just abruptly end the meeting. Or where as a bargaining team member, we spend a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour coming up with a truthful, honest flyer to be able to do rounds with, do walkthroughs with after bargaining. And then the flyer has to go through legal and has to go here and has to go there. And when it finally comes out 2 or 3 days later, so the momentum is gone, it's a very watered down version of whatever message we were trying to give. I've had the same experience as Toral, where when we've been on strike or been at a event, and we need someone who can talk to the media. We need someone who's comfortable speaking to the press. Oh, but you have to do press training. And have said the same thing. I've been a nurse for 41 years. I've been an active union member. I've been on the bargaining team. I've done the press thing. I don't need to be trained. I know what not to say, and I know how to get the message across. I've gotten a lot of feedback from people, both nurses and people in the community, that have heard me speak, and they're like, "Wow, that was really good. I had no idea that this was going on." But they're right there trying to feed it in. And part of that is a fear that you're going to say the wrong thing, or that they're going to get labor charges for having a strike that doesn't have a different reason than the last strike did. But it's mostly them just trying to control the narrative. And the sad thing about that is that they are so out of touch. Their narrative is not our narrative. And the way that they are trying to control us is by censoring us. It's why they're so nervous about having us able to communicate. I mean, when we started having Zoom meetings, when we were in the thick of bargaining and had withdrawn from the Sutter group, and we started having Zoom meetings back in November, December, they were so afraid. What were you talking about? And it's like, we were talking about the truth. We were telling people what is going on. So my sense of moving forward, when shift change becomes the Council of Presidents for CNA and NOC, is transparency is the #1 thing. And you guys know that. I'm preaching to the choir when I say that. But being able to communicate what is happening and what your expectation as a bedside nurse is to someone who is in a position to do something about that and actually listen and affect change is invaluable. So that's all I have to say. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Anne. That's great. Torald, you've got your hand up, and then maybe we can transition after Torald over to Mark to talk about some of the stuff that we'd like to win or lose, that we'd like to start implementing so that we can build out more of the infrastructure that we have. I'll just say, I don't think it's a mistake that after COVID, where many of us have had the experience of running Zoom calls of, after these various, experiences where we've all learned how to do this sort of thing, that we now have way more capacity as nurses to do this stuff without relying on staff support. So I'll pass it over to Torald, and then maybe we can move over to Mark and like what we can do after, win or lose, however the election goes, what we plan on do to kind of keep encouraging this.
Am I muted?
No, you're not muted. You're good. Well, you're muted now, Torald.
Am I muted?
You're unmuted. You're good.
Okay, so just a little bit of history. So more than anything, we want to be a union. We want to be a union first, right? And it used to be that when we had cases that were slated to go to arbitration, which for the most part would either be cases that involved a large group of nurses, or it would be termination cases. And we used to have an arbitration review board, and that always included at least some nurse leaders. And now there are no nurses there's no arbitration review board anymore. So staff in isolation makes decisions about which case can go to arbitration and which cases cannot go to arbitration without any input from even nurse reps. And that is another thing that has got to change. We need transparency, and we need our voices heard.
Torald, you're back to muted. Are you done? Oh, hold on. Someone with the iPhone has their hand up.
Hi, my name is Maria. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Maria. Do you just mind letting us know what facility you work at?
Sure. I work at Long Beach Memorial in Long Beach, California.
Nice. Yeah, go ahead.
So I had a question. She brought up a point. So for arbitration, CNA can decide not to take you to arbitration if you choose. Let's say that you go through the 2 grievances and you would like to go to arbitration. So CNA can actually deny your arbitration?
Yeah. We can talk more.
I wasn't aware of that. Okay.
That's
Thank you.
good. Don't worry.
Either deny or ignore you, what I have experienced myself.
I'm flabbergasted.
Just so folks know, we are told in Chicago regularly that there is an arbitration board that makes decisions about arbitrations going forward. And we are quite certain that in Chicago, there's no actual nurses involved in those decisions anymore. It's all staff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's just like there might have been a period, well, there would have been a period back in at least 2 or 3 years ago when a staff who was a nurse at some point would have had some say in whether something went forward to arbitration or not. But now there are no nurses working in staff aside from Bonnie Castillo. And so there are no nurses who are involved in the decisions around arbitrations at this point.
That's terrible. That's terrible. I thought we all had like a legal right to like a trial or like someone else to hear us, and that's like neutral. That's what I thought.
Well, the thing about it is every case can't possibly go to arbitration. That would bankrupt the union. But it used to be that you had the possibility of sort of putting the case forward. And then if it seemed like an important case that you had a good chance of winning, then the case would go forward. You at least had a voice at the arbitration review board. That voice has long been silenced.
Right. And we'll also say that you do have a right to go, like, to put, if you feel that you've had a grievance not be ignored and it's caused you, financial or, damages, or it's violated your union rights, your legal union rights, you can always file an unfair labor practice for failure to represent. So what seems to have happened is that our union has shifted from filing arbitration, which, you know, the whole point of the arbitration board would be that we would look at things like, this seems frivolous. And if it's frivolous, that means that, you know, in the informed opinion of the, you know, people who are involved in the union, who are nurses, then the likelihood that an unfair labor practice charge being filed would result in anything other than just a dismissal anyway, right? But
Yeah.
if it's something with merit, like that's the whole point, and that nurses would be, but we want the union to be pushing arbitration that carries merit forward. And so I guess when we're talking about how things were versus how they are currently, they're using, instead of taking our cases that do have merit to arbitration, our union settles those cases out with our own dues money. So anyway,
Thank you for this is something that I just learned. Thank you for sharing, and I wasn't aware of that was happening.
no worries. I mean, it took, I didn't know until last year that our union reps had a fiduciary responsibility for our financial well-being. So we're all learning. Mark, do you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what we can do to build up our own infrastructure, win or lose, on, you know, to kind of contribute to keeping these spaces going and independent?
Yes, can you hear me okay, firstly?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So as you said, win or lose. So we're approaching some kind of multiverse split, or, you know, if we win, what's our plan? And if we lose, what's our plan? So if we lose, then we just maintain what we've already developed right now, because it's been very valuable. And as Ali was saying earlier, that you've already started a base from which to build on and expand from, and have to make use of whatever available off-the-shelf platforms are there for us. We've already utilized YouTube, we've already utilized Facebook, maybe not so much on the Instagram, TikTok area, but we can expand on those later as well, and just keep moving from there. But if that reality comes to fruition, then we have the opportunity to have access to funds to actually create value for nurses. What are you doing for me, and what are you doing with my union dues, and how is it benefiting me? And I would say to that is, how do we benefit you? Is that we give you a voice that you haven't heard or haven't had for a very long time. And if you can't measure something, you cannot fix it. And right now, the only data we really have to go on is in the prior election, which the other lower levels were voted on for new members, but the Council of Presidents was not opposed. They won with a vote of 1,500 or somewhere in that neighborhood, I believe. And also recently, when the Kelly Press agency, first CNA put out an email to all the membership saying, yes or no, do you want to receive election material coming up from the Kelly Press agency, the third-party canvassing agency. And we found out later that only, I believe the number was 1,561 participated and said yes. So that means on both accounts, the last election, 1% of somewhere in the neighborhood of 150,000 nurses actually participated and were engaged. Also, for getting election materials, only 1% were engaged and participating. So if we cannot measure something, we cannot fix it. So the goal would ultimately be to have 100% of nurses, union nurses, being able to have access to an internally developed communications platform that is strictly and solely dedicated to union nurses. And it was mentioned before about vetting processes that have been happening already in pre-existing Facebook pages. Your vetting process is your nursing license number. One person, one vote, one account. And that way we know who's saying what and they're accounted for. And even, on a major and minor level, that it could be a platform that could be used just for canvassing to find out what opinions are regionally or nationwide or within hospitals only. Just building a tool that not just using like Facebook or Twitter or these kind of things, but taking the best of all of these social media platforms and building a hybrid that actually serves specifically union nurses' needs or communications. And not to say that this wouldn't be tricky, you know, we'd have to make a proposal for it, acquiring of funds, and then development of software, and then the moderation of it. Who is controlling the narrative? Who's controlling the narrative? What filters are it going through? So it would be tricky in the respect of, it would have to be created and funded by the union, but at the same time, accountability and transparency that it is at an arm's length. And there's no one faction that is coveting or controlling the information as well. You know, and historically, we are only here for, you know, there's all these little things that happen in life and in history that all compound one on the other that create these big changes in life, these great inventions and historical moments. So for us, it was the siloing of information that's done between hospitals, between different hospitals and regions. The only reason we're here is because somebody made a lateral connection between us, and we had a Zoom meeting, and it was people from different states. And when we said, what's going on in your neck of the woods, we're hearing stories that are the same thing happening in our neighborhoods too, and saying, wow, it's happening to you too. But we had this siloing of information. And when you have that, you know, it's just kept in these vertical columns of regions. And when you have siloing, you have a silo effect, which is there's a lack of communication, there's a lack of information, and a lack of common goals. And the only people that serves are the people who are in the lead internally. That's the only, if you're siloing information, it's just to create control from within. It's not creating any kind of common goals externally or disseminating information externally. So look what happened. We had about 4 or 5 Zoom meetings, and we went from nobody knowing nothing about what's going on to finding out, hey, this is happening all over the place. And we organized, and now we're running for the top seat in the land. Now, can you imagine what we could accomplish if people were routinely in communication with one another and nurses organizing and not just being controlled from within, as we've heard many stories from firsthand stories. Well, and use those funds that nurses dues. We use that and we create value for nurses by giving them a voice. I think that's all I could say on that right now. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
A couple of things that remind me, I know that Allison and I believe Torald had also mentioned like having our own data and nurses controlling our own lists. So basically organizing lists with phone numbers, contact information. That's a thing that is like jealously guarded by staff, and they do everything in their power to keep nurses. Hold on. Right, cool. So the like building up our own capacity to keep those lists and creating the organizational practice of letting nurses own those things. So first off, they learn how to build it, collect it, and organize it, and then have access to it when nurses want to use it, right? Also, we can create our, like, win or lose, we can create our own for our own shift change forum. We should be probably creating, right now we've been using individual Zoom accounts. We should probably create an organizational Zoom account that anyone in shift change can use without needing, just by signing up on a calendar. Having regular meetings, maybe not like as frequent as we've been having them in this election, but regular meetings where we can continue to touch base and continue to bring new people in. Regular nurse-led trainings that we can post onto Facebook or post onto YouTube, and create kind of like that database of information about how the union works. Those are all things that I think we should be working on regardless of how this election turns out. I'm still feeling very positive about the outcomes of all of this.
Dad, my teeth just got a little looser.
Okay, cool. And so I've got a little feedback from my kiddos here. I just had a 10-year-old birthday this weekend, and it's loosening, like the cake situation has been loosening teeth. So it's a good one. So anyway, and then we should just, I think that having the capacity to bring people into the different chats and stuff, where I know that, you know, the Labor Notes Healthcare Worker Network that I've been a part of has really been given me an opportunity to hear what other unions are doing and other nurses are doing outside of my own limited areas. And so I would hope that we can continue to create that space. I know we want to get our database of collective bargaining agreements up. Kamika, you and me are going to have to work on building a Chicago shift change Facebook group, probably similar to what, you know, Allison's got with the Long Beach Nurses United. And then we should be working on building something similar in the Northern California, and working on expanding all these things out so that we've gone from, you know, 3 hospitals to like 10 hospitals, and I think we're legit in like 20 to 30 hospitals at this point. Like I don't think that that's an exaggeration if we include all the different facilities that we're popping up in. So, but we have to do the organizing work of getting everybody who's, you know, like the folks out in by Sacramento who've got our buttons and our flyers. We need to get in touch with those people and get them into our space so that we can have them contribute, because the more of us that are involved, the bigger this is and the better it is. So does anyone else have anything that either questions you want to throw at Mark or me or any of the other shift change folks who are running, or just general comments? It's been about an hour since we started the call. We can begin to wind it down. I will do what I usually do in these calls. I'm going to ask for a second to close the meeting out. Does someone want to second the motion to close the meeting? All right, Mark's got his hand up. Rainey's got their hand up, seconds, thirds. Everybody, Cindy, are you in touch with one of the shift change folks in Cook County? I just want to make sure we don't lose you.
Is Nancy considers in shift change?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because she's the one who sent me the tax information.
Hey, Cindy, it's Bridget.
Oh,
I
hey,
know I've
Bridget.
been up to talk to you too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Bridget. Too.
Yeah, I came and talked to you guys. I think you have my number, and I've been sending you stuff.
Yeah.
So you can contact me anytime. You have my phone number. You can text me.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Sure. I'll text you again just to make sure you have it.
Okay.
Okay.
The next Zoom call we're planning on having, we haven't set a date yet, but we're planning on having PPC be our focus. And so we need to, I'm hoping that we can get Nancy from Stroger.
That's a good topic. Yeah.
And Raina and some of our other PPC members who can speak to how we feel PPC's been neglected and underutilized, what we think we could do to do that, do PPC better and turn it into a more powerful organizing tool for nurses. Do people, next weekend is Mother's Day weekend. I will talk with folks in the chat and discuss and maybe potentially aim for Thursday, if that works for folks, or we'll find like a better day. But we want to get one last call in before the end of the election. Everybody who hasn't voted, get your ballots in. Come on now. Every vote counts. And we are planning on having observers, both from we have folks on the ballot committee, as well as people who we can nominate to be actually at the ballot count itself. So look forward to updates on all that.
Can I ask a question, John? I'm sorry. I know we want to end the meeting.
No, go ahead.
Maybe Allison has some insight here. What do you do? Like, how is this happening? I know it goes to this organization that is collecting the ballots. Is it then counted by this organization, or is it counted by CNA? because I don't know how this process is going to work. And I'm trying to find out. And I think before, to be frank, anybody who's been on a negotiating team, Allison, you know, to count 1,300 votes doesn't take a long time if you have, you know, 6-7 people doing it. So what happens? This company collects the votes. It's brought over in a guarded van or something, and they bring the votes in, and then they have to break the seal, because that's what we do with our voting. I'm sure the seal has to be broken. And then what? The ballot people get in there and start pulling out ballots. And the difference between a negotiation and this is that it's either yes, we want the contract, no, we reject the contract offer. So this case, it's going to be, oh, we have a write-in vote for treasurer. We have a write-in vote for this region. We have a write-in vote for that region. How is this going to work, and how long will it take, and who does it? I know that's about.
I mean, you know, those are all good questions. I don't have the answer to that. All I know, and when I had ran for re-election as board of director after I was placed midterm by interview and selected by the board, those that were running for the upper seats seemed to have confidence that it was a third party, you know, unbiased. But I never really took it to the point of how exactly. I just remember, you know, when I would want to be nominated, it was recommended to me that I needed to send it as a certified letter. There were things I needed to secure to make sure things got there, but I never heard suspicion around how those ballots were counted. That doesn't mean that everything was on the up and up. It's just those in the know who were running for position didn't seem to be concerned about that. Their concern was always the inward fighting and, you know, the way people campaigned and, you know, pretty much on the inside, they have their slate that they run, and there's a lot of inner fighting on who gets to be on that slate. Like those presidents that are running in opposition to you, there may have been some infighting of who actually got to be those people, because they make decisions and staff isn't supposed to be involved, but they tend to appear to be groomed by the staff from what I've seen. So there's a lot. It seems like the manipulation goes on before the actual ballots come through. That's my understanding, but I don't know for a fact. I wish I was able to
I know that the reason they never feared elections is because they set the election up beforehand. So I mean, who cares what the result is if you're only running one candidate?
Yeah. I mean, if you look, it's interesting, right? That's the trick was always getting the nomination, right? And it's always interesting that you have people running for delegate seats and it says pick 28 people and there's exactly 28 people running. It's things like that it's just always planned out, very thoughtful. They know exactly who the people are. You know, they look into their background, what type of a leader they are. It's not the organic person, you know, filling out their form in the magazine in the back, you know.
I'd like to think that there was a bit of panic when they saw all of our applications start to show up in Oakland. So this is definitely not to their script. All right. You know what, Eric, we'll make sure that we have, we got to do a check-in call. Let's do try and talk early this week and try and get our lawyer who's helping us.
How about Wednesday? Is Wednesday a good day?
If it's after my shift, like as long as you all are okay with eight, but let's talk about that off of this call.
Sure, sounds
We're still
good.
recording this, and we can wrap this one up. And then if people want to hop in, I'm sure that the labor notes call is still going on at least for another 15 minutes. So everybody have a good night. Thank you all for spending time with us. And we
All right,
will
thank you.
hopefully be riding this all into a glorious victory, and we will see a new rebirth of our union. If not, we're going to keep fighting like hell. So I'll talk to you all later. Okay, everybody.
Bye-bye.